We've got a new rumor about what Jon Bernthal's Punisher will be up to in the upcoming Daredevil Born Again series that is undergoing a creative reboot over there at Marvel Studios. Before we get into this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. This is over at thatparkplace.com. And this rumor is coming from Daniel RPK via the Cosmic Geek on X. This is what the Cosmic Geek reports. The Punisher will have a significant role in Daredevil Born Again. He will have his own subplot in the series where he hunts dirty cops who use his symbol. So I don't really have any problems with this per se. I do feel like it is agenda driven. Obviously, we saw all the stuff that came out in the wake of George Floyd's death in 2020, how all the anti-police stuff that came out. And it does feel like this is where this is coming from. I think there's a lot more other issues that the Punisher might be dealing with rather than dealing with dirty cops using his symbol. That just seems utterly ridiculous. Maybe dealing with a bunch of drug dealers, maybe dealing with human traffickers, maybe dealing with corrupt politicians. I don't know. Those seem to be things that maybe the Punisher might put up higher up on his priority list than dirty cops who use his symbol. Again, don't have any problems with that. I think you see a really good subplot in American Gangster, where it's Russell Crowe's character taking on the dirty cops, and I think that is really well done. Obviously, he's taking care of a giant crime lord as well in Denzel Washington's character. So I don't have any problem with that storyline. Dirty cops should be brought to justice as well. But again, why would you put that as your focus when there probably are other things you could probably put to the forefront? And again, the fact that you're doing that, it does seem like it is agenda driven to me. And we know that this has been a massive agenda for Marvel Comics and a bunch of Punisher creators. They don't like seeing policemen and military officers wearing the Punisher logo. We had a story by Matthew Rosenberg, Simon Kodransky, and Antonio Fabella back in 2019 in Punisher number 13. You can see here one of the officers these two New York police officers stop Frank Castle. They do kind of like a street stop. And then once they realize they've pulled over Castle, they ask to take a selfie with him and inform him how they support his actions. Castle responds by tearing the Punisher symbol off their vehicle, tearing it up, and informing them, "I'll say this once, we're not the same. You took an oath to uphold the law. You help people. I gave all that up a long time ago. You don't do what I do. Nobody does. You boys need a role model. His name is Captain America, and he'd be happy to have you." And then you've had Jerry Conway make multiple comments about how he doesn't like the Punisher logo being used by policemen and military. Back in 2020, he wanted to reclaim the logo. He said, "I'm looking for young comic book artists of color who'd like to participate in a small fundraising project for Black Lives Matter to reclaim the Punisher skull as a symbol of justice rather than lawless police oppression." And so he thinks that the Punisher logo is being used as a symbol of lawless police oppression. Doesn't really make any sense at all. The guy's completely off his rocker. He previously shared his thoughts about the logo in an interview in January 2019 with Sci-Fi. They've actually taken the interview down for whatever reason, but this is what he told them. "To me, it's disturbing whenever I see authority figures embracing Punisher iconography because the Punisher represents a failure of the justice system. He's supposed to indict the collapse of social moral authority, and the reality some people can't depend on institutions like the police or the military to act in a just and capable way. The vigilante anti-hero is fundamentally a critique of the justice system, an example of social failure. So when cops put Punisher skulls on their cars or members of the military wear Punisher skull patches, they're basically sided with an enemy of the system. They are embracing an outlaw mentality, whether you think the Punisher is justified or not. Whether you admire his code of ethics, he is an outlaw, he's a criminal. Police should not be embracing a criminal as their symbol." I think Jerry Conway here doesn't really understand that police can be subject to the system working against them as well. When you have bad laws, corrupt politicians letting criminals go, I can see why policemen would clearly want to embrace that outlaw mentality because they're sick and tired of the system letting criminals go that they clearly have arrested and put behind bars, only to see them basically get let go the next day. So who knows what Jerry Conway is really talking about here? He doesn't really make any sense and seemingly doesn't really understand the reality of law enforcement. Nevertheless, he says, "It goes without saying, in a way, it's as offensive as putting a Confederate flag on a government building." That's not really offensive either. My point of view is the Punisher is an anti-hero, someone we might root for while remembering he's also an outlaw and criminal. If an officer of the law representing the justice system puts a criminal symbol on his police car or shares challenge coins honoring a criminal, he or she is making a very ill-advised statement about their understanding of the law, something that you just did and you don't realize it. Ironic, right? But it's Jerry Conway. The dude's got clearly woke mind virus, as Elon Musk likes to say. It wasn't just Jerry Conway, though. We've seen Carl Potts, who is a longtime writer and editor on The Punisher. He actually, I think, provides a better distinction here. He says, I do not think the police should be using the Punisher icon. The last thing I want my police to identify with is with a violent vigilante. The police are supposed to be part of the balance of power enforcing, not to be judge, jury, and executioner. Yeah, the last thing I want to see is police cars driving around with a skull emblem on it. Again, I probably disagree with that as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a skull symbol on it. Again, I think they're just misinterpreting what the symbol means. So the people that are using it, I think they think it means something and they don't like that it means that. And the people that are probably using it think it means something completely different. And they probably haven't actually talked to the people to understand why they are using it. So I'll disagree with Carl Potts on that too. As for members of the military using the symbol, he said also, even though it's probably not quite as bad of an objection, I don't think the military should be using it. That skull symbol strictly related to the military. Its biggest connection would be with the SS. And I don't want our soldiers being associated with SS. Again, that seems an utterly ridiculous comparison, completely just trying to connect it to World War II. Which, I mean, sure, I'm sure they use the skull symbol, but it's clearly not the Punisher symbol. And the skull symbol has been used way before the the Nazis came to power in Germany. Obviously, the Jolly Roger being the most famous, I think, the depiction of the skull symbol. You also see the skull marked on medications for saying that it's poison and it can kill you. So there's lots of very more popularized symbols rather than the German. It seems kind of weird that that's where you would go. I don't really think of that when I think of the skull symbol. When I think of the skull symbol, again, Punisher, Jolly Roger, and then maybe like the poison bottle, indicating that its death can kill you and stuff like that. Nevertheless, Potts goes on and says, and a big part of what helped win the peace in World War II was GIs being generous with the locals with their handing out Hershey bars and Spam and all that. The idea of some GI trying to be nice and hand out to kids wearing a skull, it just irks me. It's just kind of bizarre because I'm pretty sure like lots of military members have other kind of paraphernalia too that would probably irk Carl Potts in this case. Just doesn't really seem to follow any kind of logical reasoning. We did have Jon Bernthal. He criticized individuals sporting the logo as well, specifically people who wore the logo during the January 6th protests back in 2021. This is what he wrote on Twitter at the time. He's responding to someone saying that, like, describing people who were participating in those protests as nut jobs. And Bernthal says, I'm with you. Beautiful work. Obviously referring to the person's artwork, I guess. I'm not sure if that's original or not, but looks like it. These people are misguided, lost, and afraid. They have nothing to do with what Frank stands for or it's about. Big love, Jon Bernthal. So he's criticized the logo being used by people he doesn't agree with, clearly. So maybe he was part of pushing this storyline that we're going to see in Daredevil Born Again, given the fact that he criticized it that. However, he's also made some pretty positive comments. Back in 2021, he said this: the character in particular has real deep meaning for me and resonance in me. He's really in my heart, man. He's really in my bones. I'm enormously protective of that character. I've said before that there's nothing in this world more important to me than my wife and my kids. And only until you understand that kind of love and what it really means to willingly die for somebody do you understand what it would be like if somebody took them from you. That's a road in a darkness and a rage that really scares me and brings me to places that I've worked the last 20 years to get away from. So I was really grateful, respectful, and wary of the places where that role took me and the world in which I had to live in. He continued saying, that being said, that's where the character needs to be. It needs to be a level of darkness. I think if there's any let up on that character, you do a disservice to the character, to every iteration of the character, to every comic book that's come before, and to all of the unbelievable fans of the character. This character means so much to people in the military. So like I said before, it's not about whether you do the character, it's about whether you can do it right. And I'm only interested in doing it right. So obviously he's interested in doing it right. And that's good. And I think that what he said here really is positive. And just recently in January, he told this to Collider. just last month. I think there's a reason why that character has resonated as deeply and strongly as he has in the hearts and minds of comic book fans and first responders and people in the military and people all over the globe. I think there's a little bit of Frank Castle in everybody. He exists very strongly inside me, and I care about that character deeply. I also know that it's absolutely essential that if we do it right, and we have real sacred integrity to the source material and to what is at the core of Frank. I'm going to do my absolute best to make sure that if and when we do it right. So here he's actually making it very clear he does understand why the symbol means so much to first responders. Obviously, police are part of that, people in the military, and then just people in general all over the globe. So really encouraging comments there from Bernthal. And then this is what he told Screen Rant as well. He says, I don't know yet. I don't know. It's too early to tell as for kind of if Frank will have any kind of like character progression. But he says, and you know how Marvel is. I really can't say anything anyway. But I care about Frank deeply. No matter how much Frank grows, he's always going to be the same. Exactly. Frank Castle doesn't need to have any kind of character growth. He should stay a static character. And there's nothing wrong with that. His challenges come from external places, not really internal problems with the Punisher. He is very self-aware of who he is and confident in what he's doing, and he doesn't really do any kind of like introspection or anything like that. That's better reserved for a character like Daredevil, because and that's why they work together, and they work as contrast as well. Have good chemistry with each other. But that is what he had to say. So we'll see what happens. I'm not really excited about this rumor with how they're going to be depicting the Punisher. It just feels like 2020 politics all over again. And there's much more interesting things that I think should be covered, things that Punisher would be taking care of, that would be higher up on his food chain rather than dirty cops. But let me know what you guys make of this rumor and kind of why you think it might be happening. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth.